USA Insulation, 513-381-3626, 513-381-FOAM. USA Insulation.
55 KRC on demand. Hear Brian Thomas weekdays 5 till 9 a.m. on 55 KRC, the talk station.
.706, 55 KRC, the talk station. Happy hump day to you. Brian Thomas here, glad to be. And yesterday you heard from State Senator Shannon Jones in support of voting yes on Issue 2. And today we have a Republican Senator Bill Sietz on the other side of the issue, encouraging you to vote no on Issue 2. Welcome to the program, Senator Sietz. Pleasure to have you on.
Happy to be with you, Brian.
Now, back
when
the vote, it was 17-16, I believe, in the Senate. You and 5 other Republicans joined with all the Democrats to oppose Senate Bill 5. What's your main opposition to SB 5, Senator Sietz?
My main opposition to Senate Bill 5, Issue 2, is based on the conclusion that the Management Lawyers Organization gave us after the Senate voted on the bill. And they wrote a position paper, the Ohio Public Employer Labor Relations Association, and here's what they said. Quote, while the current law very much needs reform to restore balance, the General Assembly should take care not to limit employee rights in unnecessary or harmful ways. We can fix this law without throwing the proverbial baby out with the bathwater. Overreaching now will not serve the people of Ohio well and will just invite a future backlash with still more harm to cost-effective government. So my position is not based on what the unions say. It's based on what the management people say.
Well, you're going to have to put a little more flesh on the bones of unnecessary and overreaching. Which specific things are unnecessary or hurtful and overreaching?
Well, let's start with this. Let's start with the fact that if this is all about saving money, then why does Issue 2 say that no one above the rank of sergeant may even join a union if they want to? The president of the Cincinnati Firefighters Union, the president of the Ohio State Firefighters Union are both lieutenants in the Cincinnati Fire Department. They cannot even be members of the union of which they're now president if this passes. College professors are forbidden to join a union if they participate in any college committees, most of which are professional enhancement committees, faculty grievance committees, faculty curriculum committees. They are forbidden to join a union. They have pointed out that, I think, quite reasonably, that we want everybody to pay 10% towards their pensions. However, they abolished the practice of what's called pension pickup so that local governments that want to offer to pay a portion of the employee's share of the pension are forbidden to do so. That costs taxpayers money because when you give pension pickup in lieu of a wage increase, you are keeping wages low, you are reducing your overtime costs, you are reducing your fringe benefit costs, and you are ultimately saving the pension fund money because the pension benefit is based on your highest 3 years of salary. So when you agree to pay the employee's share of the pension in lieu of a wage increase, you are saving taxpayers money. Local governments are forbidden to use this tax-saving technique under Senate Bill 5, Issue 2. Those are a few of the examples. I find it significant, Brian, that the 4 organizations representing local government in Ohio, the Ohio Township Association, the Ohio Municipal League, the Ohio School Board Association, and the County Commissioners Association, none of them have endorsed Issue 2, Senate Bill 5, and that ought to tell you something, because here we're saying we want to give you the tools you need to manage your budget, but the 4 organizations that represent those entities say have not said they endorse this thing. And then the third point that I would make is people want you to believe this is all about employees paying 15% towards their health care and 10% towards their pension. Well, even the General Assembly would not have needed 302 pages, which is how long this bill is, to just say...
Well, I'll even interject on that one. I mean, bills are traditionally very long and many times often long because and if you look at the first page of this bill, Senator Sietz, it amends countless other pieces of legislation. And you've got to refer to them and reference back to them and talk about subparagraph A changing into subparagraph B and all the line outs. I mean, I've seen the thing. A lot of it is,
But it deals with a whole lot more than 15%, 10%. That's my point.
Right. It's an across-the-board effort to rebalance the playing field between, I would say on one aspect, public and private. Because for many years it was the case that, well, you went to work in government and you took a little bit less, but you got job security, you got pension, you got all this help. But now in this world in which we are all broke, and we seem to be broke. I mean, Cincinnati's underfunded pension problem is just, I mean, it's mind-scrambling. $4 billion underfunded? I mean, I don't know how we right that ship absent some legislative reform. And so this may not be the most perfect thing, but it does give the state of Ohio a little bit more leverage and municipalities some leverage in righting the financial problems that we have.
There are other ways to get to that result. For example, let's take pension reform. There has been legislation proposed by the 5 pension systems in Ohio for the last 2 years that, according to their actuaries, would restore all 5 of the state pension funds to solvency. The legislature has not acted on those proposals.
Well, there's a different. I mean, this is an apples and orange comparison. There are multiple ways of dealing with a problem, and I don't know that anyone is saying SB 5 is without all criticism. But this is sausage making. This is the kind of stuff you get out of government. Nobody ever has a perfect smile on their face in the aftermath of legislation being passed.
Well, the bigger problem, as you just pointed out, is the underfunded nature of the state pension funds and locally Cincinnati. So wouldn't it be prudent to get to the question of how do we shore up these pension funds? That is the legislation on which the legislature has not acted. That's where you do things like raise retirement age, which Senate Bill 5 does not do, address double dipping, which Senate Bill 5 does not do.
So you're in favor of raising retirement age?
That is what the plans themselves have proposed.
Okay, I'm just going down, Bill. You seem awfully defensive today.
No. I'm happy to act on the plan's recommendations for change because we've got to get these pension funds shored up. I couldn't agree with you more about that. But forbidding local governments from voluntarily picking up a portion of the employee's required statutory share of the pension costs taxpayers money and costs the pension funds money.
Well, I guess I don't understand that because if I am looking at something, if I'm making $10,000 a year and I'm only obligated to pay 2% into my employee pension plan or whatever, and now I have to pay 10%, but I'm making the same amount, I guess I'm puzzling over how that doesn't ultimately save the taxpayers dollars because it's coming out of my paycheck as opposed to some other revenue stream from the taxpayer.
Sure. Well, let's walk you through it. Currently under Ohio law, not addressed by Senate Bill 5, all employees pay at least 10% of their pay into the pension fund. That is statutorily required. What Senate Bill 5 says is if an employer wants to pay a portion of that employee 10%, they cannot do it. If the employer wants to do it, there is a very valid reason to do it. And that is that you keep the employee's salary lower than it would otherwise be, and that saves you money on overtime because overtime is calculated as a percentage of your salary. That saves you money on fringe benefits because fringe benefits are calculated as a percentage of payroll, and that saves you money on the back end on the pension benefit because the final pension benefit is based on your high 3 salary years. So if you keep the employee's salary down by agreeing to pay a portion of their statutorily required share, you are saving the taxpayer money, saving the pension fund money, and Senate Bill 5 says you cannot do that anymore.
But doesn't that presuppose you can keep the employee's salary down? And one of the problems that I keep hearing over and over again from elected officials to individuals downtown Cincinnati, people on Cincinnati Council, Shannon Jones yesterday, the problem seems to be that you can't keep any of this down. Any collective bargaining argument always ends up going in front of an independent arbitrator who doesn't always take into the situation the financial realities going on in the municipality quite often, and you are aware of this, splits the baby, takes the baseline of the prior year's contract and applies that and then gives some increase. So the idea that you can go ahead and lower salaries and achieve these cost savings ignores the kind of the political and arbitration reality that we've been living under now for years.
Well, first of all, only 2% of all the cases in Ohio went to binding arbitration over the period of time that we've had.
Yeah, and quite often municipalities just go ahead and roll over and consent because they realize the pickle that they're in. That's another argument.
And my argument is if you want to get rid of binding arbitration by unelected lawyer arbitrators, that's fine.
And that's in there.
And that's in there.
Right.
But what this bill does is say that management then gets to choose between its own last offer to the employees and the employees' last offer to management. A much better way would be to do what they did in Wisconsin, which is to put statutory guardrails on what the arbitrator could order, ordering the arbitrator not to make awards that exceed the local government's ability to pay, and limiting the total amount of the award to something closer to the rate of inflation.
Well, you didn't. I mean, there is another way. You didn't get that way. This addresses the arbitration problem. It just doesn't do it to the way you want.
Well, it doesn't do it to the way that the affected public employees want either, and that's the problem. When you overreach, when you throw everything but the kitchen sink in the bill in an effort to poke the eye of the public sector workers, you are stirring up the firestorm that you have.
Well,
a better way would be to use panels of active or retired judges who decide all kinds of disputes.
I would argue a better way is to have let the employees decide whether or not they want to be in a union. A better way would be to allow an open state and let people decide for themselves rather than being beat over the head and forced to have their dues relieved from their paycheck.
And you know what? That's not addressed in this bill.
I know, and that is something that drives me crazy, but you know what? Maybe we can advance that next. Would you be in favor of that in the state of Ohio?
I think we would have to have a conversation about
I
that.
don't think that was my
I'm
question.
concerned.
Would you be in favor of it?
If there are adequate protections against employees being subjected to nepotism, favoritism, and all the other things that unions guard them against, that would be something to consider. What I would propose, frankly, Brian, is that the state get out of the business of collecting union dues.
Yeah.
Let that be, and make that the solution. Let the union continue to be the exclusive representative of the employee unit, but the business of how much they pay and when and to whom, that would be decided between the union and the employees. And that would be decided between them, and the state and the governments would not be the middleman collecting that out of the paycheck.
Question.
I think that would be a better way to go.
And again, we could probably come up with hosts of better ways, but this is at least a springboard to allow some fiscal issues to be resolved. Now, let me ask you this, and on that very point, many people have said this is a whole thing about safety. This is going to be safety. And I keep going back to, in my favorite illustration, although it's not the only one, Senator, Camden, New Jersey, which their union refused to negotiate. They ended up having to lay off half their police department because they didn't have the money to pay them. Now, and with the last in, first out reality of unions, it concerns me, given that a lot of teachers have been fired that were teachers of the year because they were new. Senior teachers with maybe less experience or maybe a poorer work ethic can't be gotten rid of under union rules. But ultimately, if the money isn't there to pay, people are going to get fired, right? Or laid off, if you want to call it that way.
You're raising two issues. One is whether longevity should be the sole factor determining economic layoff. Senate Bill 5 says it should not be. I do not have a quarrel with that principle, except we should have required collective bargaining over what factors will be used in lieu of longevity. And we should also have created a window of protection for those employees closest to retirement age, because their whole retirement is bound up in the hope of getting their state pension. So what we have passed in Bill 5, it creates a perverse incentive for the employer to fire their oldest workers simply to defeat their pension rights.
Can I ask you this, Congressman or Senator Sietz? I didn't think that having a collective bargaining agreement allowed people to circumvent age discrimination laws that exist. Is that? I think
that the point is.
No, I mean, is that true? Difficult. Are you telling me that if I'm in a collective bargaining agreement, I cannot make an age discrimination claim?
You can make a
okay. Well, then the law still applies equally to people in the public and private sector.
Wrong.
Why is that?
Because the older worker that would be laid off, they would come up with a reason other than their age to lay them off.
And that doesn't happen in the public or private sector.
That happens in the private sector.
Right. Well, it's called a burden of proof, isn't it? I mean, you got to make your case.
There are countless people in their 50s in the private sector who are very good job performers who have been let go as their corporations get taken over by foreign companies, and they have no redress under the age laws because they cannot prove that their discharge was age-related.
So this puts them on the same playing field as the people out in the, I'll call it the real world.
With one distinction. the private sector worker will collect Social Security. Public sector workers in the state of Ohio do not pay into Social Security and do not collect Social Security, so their whole retirement is bound up in the hope of getting that state pension. On to the question
which
of
is guaranteed which is guaranteed. I mean, they paid into the pension. They're guaranteed under current law to get the pension.
Yeah, that's right. But you see, a private sector worker that is discharged later in life presumably has a portable 401k that
you presume much. Presume much.
And they get Social Security. Public sector workers in Ohio do not get Social Security.
I don't know that Social Security is a grand bargain, Senator Sietz. It's broke. It's the third rail of politics, but everyone agrees that it is broke beyond repair. I mean, our outstanding listen, I'm 46. I have no hope of seeing a dime of Social Security, yet I pay into it constantly.
Well, I think you make a very good point there, and that is that the state pension systems are not nearly as underfunded as is Social Security.
So they got a better deal then.
Well, and we shouldn't blow it up because it is a good pension system and it is funded, unlike Social Security. But back to your point about layoffs, what we need to remember is the state of Ohio itself has created something of this problem at the local level. We reduced the local government fund by 50% over the next 2 years.
We don't have any money.
We're
$8 billion in the hole.
We found plenty of money to give hundreds of millions of dollars in tax breaks to corporations.
Don't even get me started, because that angers me. That picking and choosing, which goes on in every administration, Republican or Democrat, is nonsense, and that's not part of this debate.
Well, you say we don't have any money. I'm saying there is money.
Oh, you're giving up tax revenue. You're not giving them a check. You're just saying you're going to waive future revenue for one company. Either way, it's wrong, but it's not giving up money.
Right, which results in us having less money. I mean, this budget, and I voted for the budget, so I'm criticizing myself, but this budget does do a great deal of harm to funding for local schools and local townships.
Senator Sietz, we are perilously out of time. We've gone several minutes over. My producer's giving me the jaundice eye. Got to run. I appreciate your information today, and I appreciate you coming on and giving us the anti-side of Issue 2.
When the management lawyers say it goes too far, there's your sign that it might just go too far.
Just 723, 55 KRC, the talk station. Fox 19 Storm Tracker time. Slight chance of early morning showers and partly cloudy this afternoon, 70 for a high. Tonight, clouds increase, showers by dawn at 54 for a low. And on Thursday, you got rain showers with a chance of thunderstorms and a high of 69. 60 now at 55 KRC, the talk station.
News, weather, and traffic. You need 55 KRC, the talk station.
732, 55 KRC, the talk station. Brian Thomas here. Glad to be. Hope you can stop by the blog page, 55krc.com. Participate in today's poll today, which is who do you think won last night in the GOP debate? Kane, Romney, Paul, Perry, Bachman, Santorum, Newt, other, or there was another debate. Right now, Kane has 70+%. There was another debate, has the balance. Go figure. Let's go to the phones. Got quite a few people to talk about SB 5. Start with Jim. Jim, thank you for calling and welcome to the morning show.
Hey, great show. I got 2 points. I didn't hear all of what that guy said on SB 5, but what he's saying about the 10,000, if the state's going to pay 1,000, they drop your salary to 9, they pay the 1,000, so now your salary's lower, your pension's lower. Yeah, in theory, but in Wisconsin, what they did was you take that 10,000, the state threw the extra 1,000 on top of that into your paycheck so you could pay it, and now your paycheck for pension purposes was $11,000.
Yeah.
And the second thing, Brian, then I'll get off.
I guess before you make a second point, don't leave that one only because that was kind of my point to him. It presupposes, like in the existing world without SB 5, that you could actually drop the salary. Well, you know that's impossible. You get a collective bargaining agreement that has a salary set. You're not going to get somebody to drop below that. That's the old way. Go ahead.
And Brian, the real dirty little secret, and the reason everybody needs to say yes on keeping 5. Is if you look at when they go to arbitration, these arbitrators are not elected by the public. We can't influence them. They come, they blow into town, they sit down, and in 80% of the cases, they side with the unions, and even the cases where the city councils have said, we're don't
broke.
have the money
right.
for this, we're broke, their answer is, Are you ready for this?
Raise taxes.
Raise taxes or borrow the money.
Yeah.
And then they blow out of town and they leave us holding the bag. And what does that do? We have to lay teachers off. That is criminal.
And you see, and that was my point. Ultimately, if you can't correct a financial picture, regardless, and I mean, unions, I'm certain that you don't want to give up some of your salary. You don't want to have a reduced salary. You don't want to have to pay more into your retirement. I get all that. I wouldn't want to have to give up either. But if it's that or lose the job, I just don't understand how that can be reconciled. I mean, that is exactly what's going to happen. People will end up getting fired in order to maintain the level of benefits for a smaller group of what will be perceived as elite union members. They'll be the ones that have the jobs. And the newer guys, sorry, sucks to be you. You're out the door. And
Where money talks. From the Steve Perrin Coordinated Financial Planning Studios, this is 55 KRC, the talk station.
739, 55 KRC, the talk station. Brian Thomas here, and a happy Wednesday to you. Hope you can stick around 1 hour from now. Harmon Kaslow. Who? He's the producer of, drumroll maestro, the Atlas Shrugged movie, which is coming soon to DVD. I know a lot of people had asked me if I'd seen the movie. Hey, did you go to the special screening Atlas Shrugged? No, I didn't get to see it, but you know what? I'm going to get to see it on DVD. So we'll have Harmon Kaslow on that. And I believe it's part one. You have a part two coming up, too. We'll find out when that's going to be released and the like. So huge fan of Ayn Rand's work. Let's go to the phones, and we'll start with Mary. Welcome to the morning show, Mary. Got a comment about SV5?
I do, and also a question. I'm actually currently reading the bill. I'm on page
good
54.
luck. It's a real, I tell you, it's an insomniac cure. I think the people at the Tri-State Sleep Disorders Clinic ought to recommend that, pulling those out. That or any other piece of legislation.
Well, I wanted to read the actual bill because I am in a teachers union, and I'm getting a lot of things from my union telling me to vote no, and I'm a conservative, and it was kind of conflicting with my core beliefs, what they're saying, and I wanted to read it to get the facts instead of just what they're telling me to do. And as I'm reading it, though, I am kind of disturbed as a conservative to see that they're establishing at least 4 committees and advisory boards with, up to probably 70 or 80 members, and then they have staff. I thought that we're trying to make smaller government, not bigger government.
Well, I suppose one way of getting to smaller government is to redo the way things are currently done. Obviously, the current system under which we operate is completely a bust. We're all broke. There's not enough tax revenue coming in, and the citizens have had it up to their eyeballs with additional taxation. So, again, going back to Sietz's comments, apparently it's not perfect. But the question is, are you going to wait around for perfection? Are you going to repeal something that gives municipalities flexibility because there are certain flaws within the bill? Are you going to hold out for that magical miracle moment where, puppy dogs and rainbows and unicorns all appear when they create a perfect piece of legislation? I don't think that day's ever going to come. I really don't, which is why I'm going to default and vote yes on issue 2 in support of SB 5, because all I can do is say we're broke. And we got elected officials that went up there and decided that, we got a way to get around the problem that creates a measure of flexibility and, create some equity in the playing field. Is it perfect? No, but there never will be one. Joy, welcome to the morning show.
Good morning. Concerning SB 5, I wish they would stop talking in percentages and start talking in real dollars. I have in front of me health insurance costs from 2010 for Franklin City Schools in Franklin, Ohio. And we, the taxpayers, considered district people, pay $1,113 and some cents compared to the employee paying $233 and some cents.
Wow, that's a substantial difference.
That is.
But I guess the only problem, though, Joy, when talking about this, and I guess in the interest of fairness, if you talk just in dollars, you're looking at one specific example there. I know there are different plans out there in the world: public plans, private plans, and
each school district and fire and police, you can pull them up on the internet, and this is public record. This happens to be through Anthem.
Oh, yeah.
And so please, everybody, pull up their own locale and see in dollar signs what the taxpayer pays versus the employee. And it's outrageous.
Joy, do you have a specific link you want to pass along to the listeners?
Well, in the anthem for Franklin City Schools, it's www.anthem.com.
Okay.
But then there's something called Venologic website. And you can go to the different addresses. I think you just punch in your school and their health and care. And this is only health. This is not dental.
Right. I would expect, with Anthem specifically, my former employer, it would only be health. Joy, thanks for that information. I truly appreciate it. Let's get to, who's next? Is it Ray? Ray, welcome to the morning show. Thank you for holding.
Hey, Brian. Ray Warwick, Mason Tea Party.
Thanks, Ray, for calling, man. Good to hear from you again.
Hey, Shannon Jones is our senator out in Warren County, and I remember talking to Shannon about SB 5 even before she started down that road. And her and I were dreaming of, decertification of the unions. And we knew that wasn't a possibility. She knew she couldn't get it done that way. But if we had decertification, no government unions like 26 of the states in our nation, and by the way, those 26 states all are doing better than the 24 who have government unions.
Yeah, you forget about the revenue-generating reality of a business going to a state with a healthier tax burden, a lower tax burden, a burden that is not going to, interrupt their business model. Flexibility. States with flexibility tend to generate the most amount of revenue.
That's right. And if we could have just said we're going to decertify and become a right-to-work state, much like they did in Indiana, we would have a different conversation right now.
Yeah. Well, didn't I asked Sietz about a right to work, and he said, well, he generally might be in favor of that. The devil's in the details, as Michelle Bachmann likes to point out, I think. But, even if she was making a dumb point, but yeah.
Sietz is a labor lawyer.
Apparently.
There's no mystery to these things. There will be less labor lawyer work to be done in a right-to-work state.
Oh, so you think there's a measure of self-interest there, Scott? I'm shocked that you would suggest a politician might have self-interest in there.
Well,
you hear me laughing, don't you? Have a good one, Scott. Good to hear from you, my friend. 745, 55 KRC.
State with the best talk. This is 55 KRC, the talk station.
749, 55 KRC, the talk station. And executive producer, internet research guru Joe Strecker wanted everybody to know that in order to, he was seeking a representative in support of SB 5, in support of voting. No, I'm sorry. Seeking a representative who was against SB 5, who wants you to vote no on issue 2. And do you know where he had to go to find one? In order to get Bill, you said, Joe Strecker said, and this is the chain of events that he had to go through. In order to get Bill Sietz to come on the phone, he had to work through the NEA in Delaware. Okay, let that sink in. Local politician, in order to get him, the NEA in Delaware had to be contacted. I'm puzzled by that. I'm a little frightened by it, too, for a lot of reasons. Scott, welcome to the morning show.
How you doing, Brian?
I'm well, Scott. I hope you can say the same.
I'm doing fine. Bill Sietz is my state senator, and I voted for Bill Sietz. And I think he's done a good job for the most part, but I think he's wrong on this on many levels. But my point is that we're sort of in this problem because of our representatives, whether it's Governor Kasich or the leaders of the House and the Senate, because they did so many things wrong on putting this together that they've alienated so many people. Because this is a state that went overwhelmingly Republican and Tea Party-ish in the 2010 elections. It's not like this, and the SB 5 no or yes votes or the no votes, whichever way it makes it go away, are way ahead. Those people just don't automatically flip like that 6 months later. But by taking people off of committees like they did, I think, in the House because they weren't going to vote for what they wanted them to vote, the way they went through some of these things. And then here recently when the governor and them were going to have this meeting with the unions to try to work it out.
Scott, I got to be honest with you, man. I am not following where you're going. What's the point? I mean, what are you driving home at?
The point is we shouldn't – I'm more pragmatic I want a lot of the things that are in there, but it's all going to go away because we didn't do it the right way to get there.
Oh, so you think most folks are going to vote no on
Brian,
issue 2?
I mean, you're a smart guy and you're a libertarian too. This is going to go down. Partly because of misinformation. I would agree with that.
Well, that's what we're talking about. I mean, this is exactly what we're talking about, Scott. I don't necessarily agree with you. I think the more people find out about it, the more they like it. And it's not perfect. I'm not going to argue it's perfect. But we need some flexibility. Our state's broke. You can blame politicians from both stripes for the broke bustedness of our state. Our state also happens to have one of the highest taxation rates in the country. It's one of the most anti-business states in the country. And anything we can do to right that ship is going to ultimately result in economic benefit. When you're competing with other states, you have to make a more pro-business environment in order to lure businesses here. And I'm not talking about the stupid picking and choosing shenanigans that Sietz brought up, because I agree with him on that. I hate that we offer tax incentives to one business and not another. Why don't we have tax incentives for everybody? Why don't we lower the overall effective tax rate for the citizens and businesses of the state of Ohio and make ourselves the darling of the United States of America for the place to settle business? No more picking and choosing, an equal playing field. That's what I'm in favor of.
Now, who can argue with that?
Matt, welcome to the morning show.
Hey, so you had to go through the NEA where to get my state senator on the phone?
Joe Strecker, and I am telling you this with a straight face. The man would not lie to me unless he was tongue-in-cheek and laughing, and he's not. Because he told me this when it happened. He said, you know who I have to go through in order to get Sietz? He said, I have to go through the NEA in Delaware. They're making me contact the National Education Association in Delaware.
Delaware? Why Delaware? Why not the Ohio NEA? Which, because it's an Ohio bill, that would make a little bit of sense.
Whoa, yeah.
But
Matt?
I'm still wondering what happened to my Senator Sietz. I've known him for a long time.
I'll let you draw your own conclusions, Matt. I'm sorry. I don't think I recall ever meeting the man. But what I do know is that Joe had to work through the NEA in Delaware in order to get him, which I find puzzling.
Present that.
USA Insulation, 513-381-3626, 513-381-FOAM. USA Insulation.
55 KRC on demand. Hear Brian Thomas weekdays 5 till 9 a.m. on 55 KRC, the talk station.
Just shy of 8:07. 55 KRC, the talk station. Brian Thomas here, and a very happy hump day to you. 1 week away from lunch out and about. 11:30 next Wednesday, October 19th. The GOP pub. October 19th, I think it's my sister's birthday next Wednesday. What a coincidence. Not a coincidence. It's your birthday tomorrow, Joe Strecker, executive producer, internet research guru, and all-around great guy. So when you call in tomorrow, make sure you say, happy birthday to Joe. I'm not sure if we're going to have a party or not, but it'll be room for celebration. We talked to Bill Sietz at 7:05. He's a Republican. He is against Issue 2. He is against SB 5. And if you didn't get a chance to listen live, podcast it. It's right there on the webpage at 55krc.com. Yesterday, talked to Shannon Jones, who is in favor of SB 5. She wants you to vote yes on Issue 2. She wants the reforms, and in fact, since she was responsible for, in part, drafting that legislation, of course she's in favor of it. That also is available at 55krc.com, so you can compare and contrast. And in the meantime, we've got a whole bunch of phone calls to talk about SB 5, maybe in reaction to Senator Seitz's comments. Many people surprised to find a Republican so in favor of getting rid of a union reform bill. It doesn't come as a surprise to a whole lot of people. If you know him, he's apparently a big union supporter. He has been for a while. And if the email's any reflection, I percentage basis, I think he's probably be happy he's not running in November. Anyhow, let's see what Dean's got. Dean, I can't thank you enough for staying on hold. Welcome to the morning show.
Good morning, Brian. Yes, my wife has been a teacher in a very conservative public school district for over 20 years, and she's always been disturbed about the power and influence of the teachers' unions. But she and her conservative colleagues have been just scared out of their wits by the union bilge that's out there and the different tactics that are being employed to scare them out of their wits.
Scared?
Specifically, things about whether they're true or not. They're concerned about pay cuts. They're concerned about reducing their retirement benefits and increasing years of service. I mean, she's been more than 20 years, and it's looking like she's going to have to put in another 5 or 7 or even 8 more years to get the same benefits that she was going to get originally. But here's my question. Do you happen to know if there are any resources that specifically refute the scare tactics that are being put out there by the unions?
Yeah.
Because they're desperately searching for reasons to vote for it, even though they're being scared out of their wits.
The one I can give you, and I've referred to it any number of times because, you hear an argument and you scratch your head and go, wow, okay, I didn't know that. And then you find out, well, drilling down into it, it's not the way it's been characterized. The one place I'd recommend is go to betterohio.org. It is a Vote Yes on Issue 2 site. I'll tell you that right up front. But they have the myths that have been perpetuated, and they have what they characterize as the facts. So in connection with State Issue 2, we'll cut salaries and benefits. They have a paragraph there that addresses that. State Issue 2 will cut teachers' salaries. And I can read that one. It's a rather small one. So it says that's one of the scare tactics government unions are using to turn to people against these union reforms. Nothing in Issue 2 determines salary levels. It only ends in the practice of handing out automatic pay raises or step increases in longevity pay or bonuses just for holding the job for a certain period of time. Issue 2 also asks that performance be added as a factor in teachers' salary increases, a goal President Obama set out in his national education policy in 2009. So there's their answer to that. So, it is a resource. And, of course, the unions have their own pages, and I suggest everyone compare and contrast. And if you can suffer through the 300-page bill, it is extraordinarily difficult to read, as all legislation like this is. As I pointed out, the senator cites, it has to be long in many cases because you have to refer by reference and incorporate by reference other statutes and other laws that you're seeking to amend. And trust me, if you look at the first couple pages of this thing, SB 5 amends a whole host of laws. So it's going to have to be long in that regard. So appreciate it, Dean. I wish you the best of luck. Again, try betterohio.org. To the next phone caller, Chris. Welcome to the morning show.
Hey, Brian. Chris Littleton. How are you?
Chris Littleton, Cincinnati Tea Party. Good to hear from you again. It's been a long time.
Yeah, I wanted to call on behalf of our friend Mathematics to add some conversation or to add some points to this conversation. This is something that I don't think's floated out enough, and this research was done by the Buckeye Institute. They're here in Columbus. And one of the things they point out is that by 2015, so this is not far off in the future, just a few years away, by 2015, Ohio schools are facing a just over $7 billion collective deficit. That number is based on their projections.
That's pension and everything? I mean,
it's what incoming revenue to the schools versus what they're going to need to meet their bills by 2015. On their own projections, Ohio schools are saying, and this is a B, not a M, a B, a $7 billion deficit.
Well, that's...
During that time, here's the kicker, and this is why it's important for SB 5. This is the real kicker. 94% of all the revenue going into those schools that contribute to that over $7 billion deficit goes to compensation packages. Not buildings, not books, not students, not computers, not classroom work. It's compensation packages.
Wow.
We all understand the importance of teachers in our community. They're one of some of the most important people in the world. But this is a mathematical problem. There is no money. There's no money. And within the very, very near foreseeable future, not 20 years from now, not a generation from now, just a few years from now, Ohio schools are going to be completely broke, and we're seeing this play out in municipalities throughout the state with layoffs of police and fire, which no one wants to have core services of municipalities cut off because there's no money. But you can't have the flexibility in union contracts to negotiate unless you have something like SB 5 on the table. This is not an emotional argument. This is not a pro or anti-union argument. This is a mathematical argument. We are broke. It's just that simple.
Perilously so. Chris, you always put a nice exclamation point on it when necessary, and I certainly can improve on those words. Appreciate the comments, as always, and I also certainly appreciate your work on Cincinnati Tea Party, Chris. Tireless efforts, and they have been so for several years now. Let's get to Mike. Mike, welcome to the morning show.
Morning, Brian. How are you?
I'm fantastic, man. I hope you can say the same.
I heard a theory espoused on another station by a prominent talk show host that talked about, or at least the theory was, that we would could be worse off if Senate Bill 5 stands, if it is not overturned.
We couldn't be worse off.
We could be.
Oh, we could.
The theory is that the Democrats, the unions, will back candidates and will stack local school boards, local municipalities who will then have, in some ways, greater latitude to bargain with the unions.
Wait a second. How can they make that magically happen, Mike? Isn't there a wait a second. If everybody votes yes on issue 2, don't you think the voters will have been heard and that they like it? And then how would a Democrat then be able to move forward and stack boards in opposition to something the majority of people have already heard on and were spoken on? It may happen in certain places, but if the will of the people is to correct things and people are paying attention, then they won't vote for elected officials who would do that.
I tend to agree with you, but I wanted to throw that out there. I don't know that...
You said it's a theory. It's a theory that might happen. It's a possibility. As long as people are able to vote and as long as people at least have a teaspoon of common sense in them, I'm going to trust them and I'm going to hope that they do the right thing. Because as I've said it time and time again, Mike, if we don't do the right thing and we don't fix the problem, and we end up electing officials that work their way around the problem and exacerbate it like we have been doing for decades, we all deserve to have the country go down the toilet and to have our monetary system crash and to go bankrupt or any of a host of problems. This is the result of stupidity. This is the result we get as a consequence of stupidity. Listen, this is wake-up time. We're broke. How much more can you say it? We're on an impossible financial trajectory here. And look at the statistics. I'm begging you, especially the Wall Street protester types. We just need to tax the rich more. No, you can take 100% of every penny. Over 500 grand. It's the most recent one I got, but I'm certain you can take 100% of every penny over 250 grand, and it still would leave our country with a deficit. Now, that's on a federal level. We got the same problem brewing on a local level, too. 816-55 KRC, the talk station. Here is your Fox 19 Storm Tracker forecast. We'll take a 60-second break. We'll get to Al and Kurt and Mike next. Well, Al just hung up. Michael and Kurt, you guys are next. Slight chance of early showers this morning, partly cloudy this afternoon, 70 for a high. Tonight, increasing clouds. We'll have showers by dawn at 54. And on Thursday, rain showers with a chance of thunderstorms in 69. It's 60 right now at 55 KRC, the talk station.
You're in for a long wait this morning. Westbound 275, pretty much from the Milford Parkway to Montgomery. Had reports of over a half hour in that stretch of road, so it's going to cost you some time. 71 southbound, still on and off slow from 275 to Red Bank. Northbound from Montgomery Road to Reagan, 75. Cincinnati-Dayton Road through Sharonville and through Laughlin, you're on the brakes. Inbound 74 has improved, just on and off slow from Montana. Northbound 75. Buttermilk to the bridge has gotten better, still extra time. You're really slow. Southbound 275 from Beachmont to Kellogg, and you're also slow eastbound from the Kentucky 16 to an accident at 3 Mile. Dave Armbruster with traffic. 55 KRC, the talk station.
We're broke.
Thank you. John Boehner even says we're broke. Hey, this isn't a Republican or Democrat issue. Broke is broke, man. It does not have a religion. It does not have an ethnicity. Broke is broke. And all the prayer, love, hope, regret, concern in the world ain't going to change the fact we're broke. I hate it. I don't want it to be that way. I have children that are going to have to grow up in this country unless they move because we have so far gone against what was traditionally the thing that made America great, liberty. They're going to have a problem on their hands, and it worries me, and it should worry every person out there. The fact that we have blown through so much more during our lifetimes that we leave our children with the debt from our consumption. It's appalling. Michael, welcome to the morning show.
Hey, good morning, Brian. I'm glad I only listened to about half of what Mr. Sykes had to say, because with the amount of blood that shot out of my eyes from just that part, I'd be in serious hurt if I had to listen to the whole interview. I don't even know where to start with the guy of how wrong some of his analogies were and his logic. I'll just give you a couple points.
All right.
Number one, this if or that thing. If we don't pay the pension, then we have to pay more in wages. That is a fallacy. We can't afford either. We have to have folks contributing more to their pension, just like the private sector does. and we have to control wages as well because
Right.
the money's not there.
Yeah, and that the springboard for that you can save money without that component, I think, was predicated on the fact that you could actually lower a salary in order to pay into the into the retirement system. And I mean, have you ever heard of a situation that you've actually lowered a union member's salary in a public union? It just doesn't happen.
No, it absolutely doesn't happen because I work for a union company. I'm in sales, but I work for a union company. They would never stand for that. The second thing that he so flippantly, talked about, well, the private sector has their 401k to fall back on.
Yeah.
I mean, my 401k has dropped by like 40%.
Michael, you are preaching to a choir of folks right now on that one. I mean,
holy crap. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, and
I'm going to have to work an extra 10 years probably because it's not going to recover that quickly.
More than likely. Michael, my philosophy is I'm going to die either here or at whatever job I'll be working at the time. I can't envision retirement. I mean, I just can't see it as being possible.
I'm with you. And my father-in-law is in his early 60s, and he has absolutely changed his mindset. He's going to work until, GE tells him that he's got to go. If there's one positive thing that came out of listening to Mr. Sietz, I will say that the follow-up guest that you had on the radio from the Tea Party.
Yeah, Chris.
I have flirted with joining that group because I admire a lot of their positions, if not all of them. I am absolutely going to get involved with that group in my local community in Westchester.
Good for you. Michael, they got a good group up there. You'll be happy talking to the folks at the Westchester Tea Party groups. And if you need to be introduced to anybody, just go to the Cincinnati Tea Party webpage and email Chris Littleton. He's happy to spread the love, the joy, the news, the information, and the good word that is the Tea Party. I mean, it is truly I would argue it's not a Republican or Democrat. I would argue it's libertarian. Fiscal responsibility, limited government. There's your libertarian part, and free markets. I mean, how can you object to that in a society, in a situation where we have moved from liberty to government oppression, to the micromanagement of our daily lives, whether it's what we eat, what we put in our bodies, how we run our business, every single aspect of our world has become micromanaged. And I detest it, and I think it is obviously a part of the biggest problem why we're having such a terrible economic downturn. Well, one of them anyway. 821 55 KRC, the talk station.
Hannity, Hannitizing the Tri-State weekdays at 3 and at 55krc.com. Search Listen Live from 55 KRC, the talk station.
824 55 KRC, the talk station. Happy Wednesday to you. Brian Thomas here. The phone number is 749-5500, pound 550 on your AT&T phone, on the web at 55krc.com, where if you can't listen live, you can always podcast it. Still talking a little SB5, and we have been since the 7:05 hour when we talk with Senator Bill Sietz out of the state of Ohio, who's against SB5, voted against it when it was up in the Senate, and he wants you to vote no on issue 2. If you're in favor of SB5 and the reforms that it offers, vote yes on issue 2. And about issue 2, Jeff, welcome to the morning show.
Good morning, Brian. You're a true patriot, buddy.
Thank you, brother. What's on your mind today, my friend?
Well, as always, I've told you before, I have a family and friends in the educational system, and no matter if they're new people or old people, they're all starting to, really, really discuss, in, of course, behind closed doors, so they won't get fired for something else, that, the unions have just way too much power, and one of the things that I thought was really interesting was a lot of the issues are even being decided on without even any votes anymore. I mean, they just basically tell them what they got, and this is what you're going to do. And
union management maybe not always representing the interest of the common everyday union laborer.
Right, and what I think is the interesting parallel with that is, if you, as you and I both know, it's almost like a small, current government. I mean, they're telling you what's best for you, whether you're in good shape or bad shape. They're not allowing free thought. They're not allowing individuality, and that's just going to wreck it no matter what. I mean, we've seen it too many times in history.
I bet there's a disparity between union hierarchy, management pay scale, and the pay scale of the average common day frontline worker too. Just throwing it out there. Not know for sure, but it seems logical. Thanks, Jeff.
This is 55 KRC, the talk station.
8:31, 55 KRC, the talk station. Brian Thomas here. Glad to be. Hope you are having a real nice Wednesday, hump day. 1 week away from lunch, out and about. Going to be going to the Grand Old Pub. Been there before, loved it so much, we're going back. Real quick, let's get a hand count. Joe, you going to be there next Wednesday, 11:30 for listener lunch. Bess, the intern, you are going to. I got a thumbs up from Bess. Guys, if you missed it last time, I went to Pompilio's. Photographs available, 55krc.com. We'll see if you can't figure out which one's best, and then you'll want to show up next Wednesday at the Grand Old Pub. Let's go to the phones. We're talking about talking about Congressman or Senator Sietz. Spoke with earlier. He does not like SB 5, which means he wants you to vote no on issue 2. If you like the reforms that Ohio is enacted and you want to keep them, then you vote yes on issue 2. Great website to give you some information on the pros and cons, or rather the myth versus fact is betterohio.org. I mentioned that one before, and I believe, is that on my blog page at 55krc.com? Yes, it is, according to my producer. Let's go to the phones now. Hey, Jay, welcome to the morning show. Thank you for calling.
Okay, well, thank you, Brian. Hey, if you're going to vote no on Senate Bill 5 and your side wins, you better hold on to your wallet. But my main point is...
I don't know what that means.
But taxes are going to go up. If SB 5 goes down...
Oh, if it goes down. You see, here's the confusion. I thought you said if you vote yes and it's upheld... then you don't have to worry about Jay's concern. If you vote no and it's shot down, exactly. That was one of the reasons.
Hold on to your wallet.
Right,
Absolutely.
because arbitrators, as they have now, can force municipalities to just continue to pay or increase, which means you have to go and increase taxes.
Here's my main point, Brian. You asked a very astute and relevant question of Mr. Sietz, and here's the situation. It is simply immoral and wrong that any employee should be forced to join a union simply because that union exists and have their dues collected and that money used on things that they may not agree with. That's why more and more states are becoming right-to-work states. The fact that Ohio is not a right-to-work state is an embarrassment, and the fact that he had to equivocate on answering that question and couldn't clearly, that speaks volumes and tells you everything you need to know about his point of view.
Jay, I got to be honest with you. It's one of the reasons why I asked the question. I appreciate that, man. I really do. And if you didn't get a chance to listen live, pull up on podcast. Kurt, you've been on hold for a long time. Thank you for holding. What's on your mind, my friend?
Hey, Brian. You're right. The more we talk about this, the more we get the information out there, the more people are going to be in favor of it. And I took the initiative. I printed up on my own. I paid like $90, had 3,000 business cards printed up with issue 2 information on one side, issue 3 on the other. I dropped some off for you guys. But I really encourage people to get involved. I mean, they've got if they're interested, they call any other Tea Party, a local Tea Party. Look for Cincinnati Tea Party online. You can make calls for issue 2 from your home. I mean, if you can only contribute like 5 minutes a day,
Kurt,
you can do it.
Kurt, you know what? An excellent suggestion, and mainly I can't thank you enough for holding to get that out, but also I want to point out that if you do that, you're not going to get paid $11 an hour. You're going to do it because you think it's good for the state. You're going to do it because you think it's good for ultimately the taxpayer. You're going to do it because you think it's the right thing to do. Right. You're not going to go out and do it because you're getting paid $11 an hour, which is what I understand many unions are hiring people to go out and do.
Hey, Brian, may I tell you something? I talk with a lot of people. I mean, I hand these cards out. I've talked with hundreds of people about this. May I tell you a little something I've learned about talking with teachers?
Go ahead, real quick. You got about 40 seconds.
Okay, teachers. Here are things. Tell them good teachers will be rewarded by this. If 2 teachers in the same school district, they're forced with the same credentials and so forth. The unions force the districts to pay them the same, whether they come in and work 14 hours and do a great job or do the bare minimum to not get fired. So good teachers should like this because they will get rewarded. They don't have to worry about having their performance graded by standardized tests. The individual school districts can decide how they can do it. There's something called the Terra Nova test, which measures the advancement of an individual student from day 1 to the end of the year. Even if they start at a 3rd grade reading level, it doesn't matter. Terra Nova is an objective test how far they will advance. Also, tell people to watch the movie Stand and Deliver. Please watch this. It's about a fellow went into an inner city school in Los Angeles and started an AP calculus program, got great results. Would you please watch that, Brian? It's called Stand and Deliver.
I'll be happy to do that, Kurt, and I'm certain some listeners who heard you mention that will do the same. Thank you for calling again, 835.
A return on your listening investment. From the Steve Perrin Coordinated Financial Planning Studios, this is 55 KRC, the talk station.
839, 55 KRC, the talk station. Happy Wednesday to you. Brian Thomas here on the morning show, and so happy to be because on the telephone, Harmon Kaslow. He is the producer of the Atlas Shrugged movie. Welcome to the program. It is a pleasure to talk to you, Mr. Kaslow.
Oh, it's nice talking to you, Brian.
Big fan of the book. I read it a long time ago, high school, and then again, I think when I was in law school, I reread Atlas Shrugged, and it's frighteningly a parallel to what's going on right now. The movie's set in 2016. The book is, too. Country's most competent and productive workers start systematically disappearing, and with good reason. It's because everything they do for society and the earnings they make and their efforts to better society are basically stolen or interfered with by government, and the entire world basically shuts down.
Exactly. And we were really excited about being able to show the movie April 15th earlier this year, and now we've got it on DVD. It's coming out November 8th, Election Day, which is very appropriate as if people have local elections going on that day, they'll really have a chance to at least begin to acquaint themselves. I mean, the book's 1,200 pages, not very easy to read, but we've done the first part of the book now, and people who were inspired or influenced by the book, people want to learn more about it now, can go see it on DVD.
And the folks that I've talked to, I did not get to see the premiere when it showed up in town, Mr. Kaslow, I'll be honest with you, but I'm really looking forward to getting a copy of the DVD, being such a fan of the book I am. Most people said, wow, it really did a great job conveying the very long book that you referred to, Atlas Shrugged. How did you get the movie rights? Can I ask you that? Because
Sure. I mean, John Aglioloro is really the gentleman that deserves all the credit for that. A successful entrepreneur. He acquired the rights from Leonard Peikoff, the executor of Ayn Rand's estate, in 1992, which was about the time that a survey had come out just asking people, what books had influenced their lives, and Atlas Shrugged showed up as number 2 right behind the Bible. So, John, being an entrepreneur, thought, well, I'll get the rights. I can go out to Hollywood. A studio would just, love
jump at the idea. Just jump at it.
Yeah, jump at right. Here's a great message film. I mean, what happens to the world when its best minds go on strike and vanish? And, we know what Hollywood's response to the movie was.
A collective raised middle finger, I believe we could say, can't we, Mr. Kaslow?
Absolutely. And so John, really in the spirit of individualism, I mean, it's very consistent really with the theme of the book, dug into his own pockets. He financed the movie himself. And ultimately, we did our own independent theatrical distribution of the movie. We encountered initially some resistance from exhibitors and others, but ultimately we prevailed. We did almost 20% more per average on our opening weekend than Ides of March, which was a George Clooney movie that was backed by tens of millions of dollars of advertising. Our advertising budget was about 1%. And I think the whole message is that there's a large population in this country that embrace the message of this book, that embrace message movies. Hollywood's not very responsive in doing that.
No.
John was not to be denied, and here we are. We've got part 1 done. If people want to pre-order, they go to our website, atlasshruggedmovie.com/DVD. And now we're committed to moving forward with part 2. And as you know, being familiar with the book, there's some great things that occur. There's a speech in there by Francisco D'Ancona about money.
Yeah, that actually, I got to tell you, Harmon, that the one thing that every time I recommend the book, I point out that it is a very long book. I don't know that it's difficult to read. It's just long-winded, and that speech. Let me tell you, in the book, it goes on, I think, for probably maybe 50 or 75 pages longer than it needed to, She got the point out, and then the horse died, and she continued beating the horse.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, no, and it's interesting because, even in the middle of the speech, John Galt saying, and now I've been talking to you for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow.
It's like a Castro speech. Can I leave yet?
Really could be its own book. So
let me guess, Harmon Kaslow, you're going to edit that down and make it succinct and punch everybody in the intellectual head.
Well, you know what? I think that there's a group of people that have read that book that simply, if we played the speech in the theater, they'd pay and sit and listen.
Yeah. I'm not one of them. As much as I love the message, as much as I love Ayn Rand's works, that one and others included, that wouldn't be as compelling for me, sir.
No. But so we're moving forward with part 2 in
Good.
2012. I mean, I think you've really got a pulse of what's going on.
Oh,
and I just think that
you're living. This is cool, man. You know why? Because your group, the people who built this movie, made this movie, who got dissed by Hollywood, went out and did it on their own. They are illustrating really what Ayn Rand was trying to illustrate in the book: is that people who produce can actually go out if they're not hampered with. They can make money. They can create a product. They can serve humanity. Whatever they choose to do, it is the impediments of the powers that be that prevent that from happening.
Absolutely. And so, the message of the movie, I think, scares the people that are in power. I mean, that is the message. That's what we learn, when we read the book, and then they come back with, their hands open, willing to turn everything over back to these producers because they put us in such a deep, deep hole. 2012 is going to be a pivotal year, a major decision. Everyone in this country is going to need to make as far as where we're going to go in the very near future. It'll be exciting. We'll have the part 2 of the book will be available in theaters just prior to the elections, the presidential elections in 2012.
Perfect.
Yeah, so if people, want to begin their sort of adventure down the road of Atlas Shrugged, now's a great time to do it. They can start by seeing the DVD. A lot of people who watched the movie, who weren't familiar with the book, went out and bought the book. I think opening weekend, Amazon reported 60,000 sales of the book.
And this is a book that's been around since the 1950s.
Been around since the 1950s. People, when they heard we were making it into a movie, were concerned, it's going to be a period piece, so on and so forth. It took very little adapting it to just out in a few years into the future. I mean, when she wrote the book, it was literally a few days into the future, and it's very scary when you begin to think about the direction that we're going. And
it's Harmon Koslow. I got to cut you off because we're out of time. It's Orwellian in its reality. I don't mean to discount or I can support Ayn Rand by mentioning Orwell because they're both geniuses. It is prophetic. Read the book, see the movie, get to Atlas Shrugged Movie, is it .com, correct?
AtlasShruggedMovie.com.
Get a copy of the DVD, watch it, and look forward to seeing...
And we'll get you a copy, Brian.
Oh, thank you.
We'll talk about it some more.
I look forward to seeing it. Harmon Koslow, producer, thank you very much for making the movie, and look forward to watching.